if you're editing stuff, you want to use Premiere Pro because it's just video,
yeah.
and you want to use Premiere Pro. But it's not an interview. As you know, I think that's like a technique in itself. Whenever you watch like on TV or people that interview for a living, like it's a skill. It is genuine.
Yeah.
My personal favourites, I think the best interviewers are the ones who start casual, like we have. All the best known interviewers are they seem like friends. Otherwise, people are so like rigid. You know, they're no.
How do we do that? Because I hate you.
Oh yeah, that's true.
All right, I guess we will just start then with, who are you? What do you do? What, a bit about Peter.
Yes, I think you can use my name. Make me introduce myself.
Fuck.
My name's Peter Shrive. I'm 32, I think. Yeah, 32. I've been a designer for. I mean, you've got some questions. I mean, we're based off your questions that you sent to me.
Oh, yeah, I guess we could go off them, like, which is just like.
I threw out some like loose stuff I can sort of go through. So, I mean, I think your first one was, how long have you been in the industry and how did your career develop over time?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best story. I mean, no one cares who I am. I mean, no one met my life cares who I really am. It's the graphics thing is the interesting part. So I've been doing this for, I think, a smidge over 10 years, I think. 32 now. Yeah, so I think it was between about 18 to 22, I was educated. And then since then, 10 years, I'm 32 going on 33. So I've been doing this job for about 10 years on and off.
Okay.
On and off. That makes it sound like I've had a break. I've not had a break. I have been doing it for 10 years.
This is all you've done pretty much, yeah.
You've dipped in and out of. I haven't. I've been doing it for 10 years, just over. But how long have you been into it? How you create develop over time? So that's actually one of your best questions. I think that you're right. How to develop over time, because when you're younger, I think you have quite a linear view of how a career will develop, and that's not the case for most people. So mine developed, as most do, I think, quite organically. So, are you okay for me to go into detail?
No, please don't. That would ruin my interview.
So I started off. I mean, how much depth are we talking? How much depth
as much as you want to. Go all out, man.
Okay. So originally, I didn't want to be a designer. So I was a waste man. I left school. I fucked up college the first time around. I worked in a warehouse, and it was so depressing that I was like, I need to go back to, because all I did was spend all my time fucking about smoking weed. So I thought I need to go back to college. My uncle, I don't know what he does now, but my uncle at the time, he worked for like a committee in England that oversaw professions. There were things that were like sort of going extinct. So like stonemasonry, thatching, blacksmithing, farrieing and stuff like that. And I was talking to him when we were at a family event once. I'm getting pissed. And I was like, that sounds great. I was like, blacksmithing sounds cool as fuck. So I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do blacksmithing. But I didn't have enough points because I fucked college up and stuff. I didn't have enough points. So I was like, I have to go to college, get some points so I can go to do the blacksmithing course I wanted to do, which was in Guildford or something. So I did BTEC level 3. And it was going pretty good. It was pretty decent. And I think BTEC level 3 is a 2-year course. I think by the second year, we had the same tutors. We had about 3 tutors for both years. One of them, he's still a good friend to this day. And I consider him a mentor. Some people you meet in your life, they're not just teachers or tutors, they're mentors. He said earlier on in the second year, he pulled me out of class once and he apologised for something. I'm not going to go into that story. But then he said to me, look, it'll be a waste if you don't do more design. He was like, I know you want to do blacksmithing. He was like, trust me on this. He's like, you're good. He was like, you have like a thing for this. And he was like, please, like see it out. And he was like, I want you to stick with it. Trust me. I was like, all right, like this, I do trust this man. So that's how I carried on doing college. So did the BTEC level 3, then I did H&D level 5. So I don't have a degree. I don't have a level 6 degree. H&D goes H&C level 4. I got H&D level 5. I looked at universities. I went to open days, looked around, but I was like, for me, early on, I could kind of. I mean, I know you go to university.
You go shit all over uni now.
Yeah, well, I didn't see the point doing it for year 3 because most of the people I knew who already were designers and stuff, they kind of they grafted, did work experience, and they were at better positions. A lot of people I knew who did uni and design floundered more. I was like, what's the point? Like, I'd rather save the year and get some experience rather than do a third. Yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. That was just the way I saw it at the time. H&D level 5, that went fine. So we're talking career development. I suppose at college, my main focuses were branding and packaging. Those were the ones that got. I'm going to say my dick wet. I hope I'm going to say that in an interview. Like that's like I even got. Oh, you know this obviously, but I got a national award for a packaging project. It's a silver in the IOM Three Things Packaging Awards, H&D. It's still in my house, sort of thing. That was great. And I like packaging. I like luxury packaging, and I like branding, especially branding for packaging. All those were great because I like the idea of making stuff. Like designing stuff was great, but I really into my last year of H&D, I got really into production. I got into fabrication, laser cutting and stuff. All the facilities we had at that college.
Yeah.
That was enjoyment. It wasn't just designing, which is great. Like thinking of something is good, designing something is great, and then making it was even better. Having something in your hands. So that's where I thought I was going with it. And when I left college, I got invited to. I got invited to two internships. So off my final exhibition at college, I got a guy came. It was unfortunate because he knew a friend of mine who was a designer. The designer was hoping to get a link, but the guy invited me.
You instead.
So my first internship was a few months at Boxer, which was in Birmingham. They're not there. The company's still around, but they're American, and they binned off the Birmingham branch about a year or two after I left. Not because I felt it.
Because you left. Yeah.
Just because money wasn't there anymore, but it was they were brand and packaging, so that was ideal. Did some time with them. And I was like, I'm enjoying this. And I had an internship invitation for a family friend. He ran a printing and production company, so he did printing some signage and exhibitions. So that'd be cool. So I went to do the internship there, but they didn't put me in the design department. The guy was like, do you know who will get on? He was like, you'll get on with Ant in the production department. So I met this guy, Ant, and to this day, he's still a good friend. And he taught me how to CNC and fabricate. So then earlier on, I just left design and all that stuff. But then I could use a CNC machine. And I could fabricate stuff. So I started working on exhibitions, and that was really cool because obviously I went from packaging, making small things to like building stores and exhibitions and stands and stuff like that. And that was like, wow, this was like a level up in my head. I was like, right, skills done. By this point, though, the second internship actually turned into a paid position for a bit. In a relevant story is because one of the guys drilled through his hand on like my first week there, and they basically said to me, they're like, do you actually want to work here for a bit? Because this guy, he was called Mark, like, you won't be coming back for a few months. Do you want his job for a few months? I was like, yeah, why not? So that was quite funny. So the internship quickly turned into a paid position. My plan when I left college and did those internships, my plan was I had a few other things lined up. I hadn't been invited, I had a few other things lined up, and I was going to bounce around and try a load of different things.
Yeah.
After the second internship and earning a bit of money, I was kind of sick of not being poor. I had some money, but I wanted a job. I kind of thought, you know what, I'm going to hold on, a quick drink before my mouth dry shut on. I thought, is this? I'm going into heavy details.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Yeah, I think this is great.
So, yeah, I was like, I want a job. I want to earn some money. I want something, proper full time, something full contract, etc., etc., etc. So, one of the college tutors hooked me up for a job. He actually got in contact when I was doing this internship turned work, and he says, "Look, someone's contacted me, and I think you're the right person for it." Fine, went along, and it was a signage, vehicle wrapping, exhibition place in Birmingham.
Oh yeah.
This is good. It's not a million miles from. I was still living at home at that point. Still not a million miles from my parents. The pay was slightly better. It wasn't great, but it was slightly better, sort of thing. So I went and worked there. Sort of. Let me just follow this because I wrote out this in a hierarchy. Yeah. So I mean that was pretty good, and that was quite hands-on. So obviously you had the designing stuff, but designing this is when you're in education, college, university, whatever, like design is quite linear. But it's not until you try these different jobs that you realise that it changes, that not just the workflow, but the attitudes and how you're doing things changes. So I'd already done. The clients you serve, the work that's expected at the level they want in the timeline that it needs to be produced on different materials, all changes how you're going to do a job. For instance, try and give examples. Packaging on a large scale, packaging design, and I don't necessarily mean just technical packaging design, but artwork for packaging as well. Yeah. You get quite a long lead because obviously, if someone's going to have 15,000 units of soap packaging made for their new soap brand, it needs to be perfect. It needs to be right because it's going to be all made. It's going to be all printed, made, die cut out, wrapped, put on soap, and put on shelves. It's got to be right first time. So the main thing is things got to be right. There's a lot of approvals, attention to detail. In the vehicle wrapping and signage world, the biggest thing I'd say is turnaround time, speed. Like, so people want their vans and vehicles to look good, but really you can't. There's not a lot of time. Someone brings their van, the vehicle in, or they go, "When can I have it done?" It's normally next week. They're bringing the van in for a day. There can't be any fuck. It has to be done quick now. So
Yeah.
the way the way you approach a project is very different. Not to mention the amount of time allocated to design and artwork is a lot smaller.
Yeah.
Packaging, you have weeks, if not months. In the signage and vehicle wrapping world, you have hours. You might get days if you're lucky, but you have hours, which obviously affects your ability to plan a project. How you can't sit and do a full illustration,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
well, we're talking heavy use of stock. You're going to do a lot simpler designs. It's got to be very easy to read. There's no nuance to it. The packaging design, well, you're going to get a long period of time to really develop something that is going to look great. Those are they're opposite ends of the
Yeah.
spectrum.
Yeah. Fuck.
So that's something you don't learn in education at all. That the industry and job defines the kind of designer you will be and the kind of way you're going to have to design. That was interesting. Obviously, I learned kind of how to wrap vehicles. I'm not a vehicle wrapper, but I also worked in the CNC department and also I did a lot of printing there. So now, I could
What is CNC? Explain.
computer numerical control. So basically, it's one of the primary ways that we still fabricate parts in the entire world. It's basically you have a large metal bed,
Yep.
which normally has vacuums underneath, like vacuum pipes. There are little circles in the bed, but there's a vacuum system underneath. You put sheet materials on top. The vacuum sucks the sheet down to hold it still. You have a large moving gantry on top with what is almost like a huge drill, but they're not drill bits. They have different specialist cutting bits, and it moves overhead. And basically, on a program, you give it like usually a 2D. They can do 3D as well, a 2D sort of diagram, and it cuts things out. So it might be as simple as if you've got just signs and they need to be all this side, rounded corners, holes for the drills and stuff, it will just cut those out. But it can be more specialist, like CNCs can, mill things up and down, hilly sort of thing. They can. It's the same if you you got milling and lathing as well. They're all, CNC kind of machines. But I was doing flatbed CNC machines, so it's mainly for cutting out things for either signage or exhibitions. And normally with exhibitions, you cut things out and then you fold and build them together and then lock in, and that's how those sort of things work.
Okay.
You do other stuff like I built train tracks for a kid once. Like the boss had a friend, and his kid wanted one of those. The wooden train tracks, and you get the little trains, and they've got the little wheels, and the wood ones, and they just run along it.
Oh
Like
yeah,
old,
yeah.
from like the 50s and 60s. So his kid wanted a massive one, but no one makes one. So the boss was like, "Can you do this?" I was like, "Yeah, sound." So 2 or 3 days, I just built this massive wooden kids train track with like little stops and chicanes, and that was good. It's metalwork. Like I remember once we had it was one of the zoos, and we had there were like metal signage, and we had to like mill out all the text, and that took forever. Stuff like that. That was CNC.
Okay.
Fabrication, sort of fabrication, making stuff, sort of industrial equipment, and then the printing and the signage. So that was good. The problem with that place was I stayed there for 5 years, which was about 3 years too long. Who's going to be watching this interview, by the way?
I don't know. I've got to like write up the interview, like write up about it. Then I was just going to include a link to YouTube, so and it would be any of my lecturers. It's Will's module. I guess if he wants to watch it, he could. I don't know if he will, but
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair enough. No, I was going to say I didn't know if it was you had to present it to students or anything, because one of my tips, I suppose, to young designers and students is don't stay anywhere more than a year or two, like jobs. Like, I mean, obviously, if you land some sort of golden role, fuck it, stay with that. But like earlier on, I think you should hop around. So I stayed at that place for 5 years, and I shouldn't have done because I just got stuck down with life and earning money and just doing the day to day. You get comfortable. If you get comfortable quick early, you get stuck at a level. What you should be doing is moving, so you're always advancing your skill set.
Okay, that's actually quite good advice. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously the internships were great for that, and then I moved into this place, and I thought it would be for a time. 5 years is too long. I think you should move maximum 2 years. Ideally, move after a year, stay maximum of 2, and then you go on to the next place. And new skills, new people, new workflows. You're always upskilling yourself and earning. If you stay in the same place, 1, your earning potential is lower, and 2, you get comfortable, so you're not learning anything new. I moved from that place after 5 years it was good because we got made redundant. So I got a redundancy package. Then the company got bought out of liquidation, and then I moved. So I got a redundancy package, and then I got a new job. That
What
was
was this?
fantastic.
Was this COVID time, or was you was working somewhere else when I met you,
This
wasn't
was
it?
before COVID. This was probably about 6 months before COVID, I guess.
Yeah.
I moved to a design and like marketing studio in Sutton Coldfield, which is also in Birmingham, but another side sort of thing. And this was a traditional agency, a small studio agency. They probably had under 15 people, I guess, including the boss and his wife and stuff. And it started pretty good. It ended badly, but it started pretty good. This was totally different. So instead of any sort of production or stuff, they're very digital focused. So it was all stuff for web. It was digital brochures and also 3D and motion graphics. And they had a 3D and motion graphics guy. I mean, he's a friend still. It's called Barnett. But basically, the boss was like, it'd be great if Barney's very good at this, but it'd be great if you sort of started picking it up. So during my work hours, I was learning as well. So while I worked there, I started learning 3D and motion graphics and picked that skill set up. So now I've got a load of production ones, and I've got a load of digital skills. And I stayed that for 18 months. COVID happened. I was there for 18 months, and at the end of that, they made me redundant.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided to go freelance. And I suppose in terms of pivoting career development, for a long time I said I wanted to do packaging. Then I was into production, fabrication, and then I was kind of like, well, I'm going to give digital design a go. So I've been freelancing just over 3 years, and I just focus on I'm not saying I don't do any printed stuff, but the majority of my career stuff now is digital design.
I was gonna ask to go more into what you do now because digital is like really broad, and like of course I know what you do, and like I know it is very broad, but a lot of it is like the 3D stuff at the moment, isn't it? Like you show me some of
Yeah.
like I know you do also the brochures and stuff like Hannah, but I've seen you working a lot on that program that's all 3D, like the storefront and stuff. Like going a bit into like the digital work you do.
Yeah. So I mean, right. So I suppose my core, I say core five. It's core four in terms of in terms of deliverables, but I tend to focus on product branding, 3D motion graphics and presentations, especially PowerPoints. And I'd say as a fifth, like a general art direction, because that's sort of a broad overarching skill art direction is. But for deliverables, is product branding, because company branding is a fucking minefield. So product branding, motion graphics, 3D, and presentations. Sorry, what were you saying? Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, what do you like primarily focus on? But that kind of covers all of it. But I was going to say, like, what
Yeah,
a good question I think maybe is like, how does it affect your workflow and how you approach a project based on what you're doing in that area of digital graphics?
right.
If
Okay.
that's
So well, we'll talk about problem now. The problem I have is I'm a generalist. So you'll see this online, especially with UI UX stuff. You've got in our field, you have generalists, specialists, and hybrids. So generalist is someone who does a lot of things. A specialist is someone who does one or two things, and a hybrid is someone who does somewhere in the middle. I'd say I'm a generalist because of my background and now what I do. I've picked up a lot of skills. I probably don't do any of them amazingly. I probably do all of them mediocre. You know what I mean, sort of thing. Because I'm not a 3D designer. I'm not a motion graphics artist. I'm not a presentation designer. I'm not one of these things. I'm quite a generalist. So what my core sort of focus on and what I do these days is, I mean, I tend to focus on working with industrial and retail technology companies. I have other clients, but sort of my ideal thing is that if you're an industrial company, say you make air compressors, or you make fabrication equipment, or even agricultural, you make tractors or something. I ideally want to help you brand those products, help you with your 3D, because a lot of these companies have sort of CAD CAM drawings for like manufacture and stuff like that. But I tend to work in Cinema 4D, so cinematic stills and videos, motion graphics so they can advertise with, and then presentation for sales materials. So I like to focus. That's my ideal workflow. Is someone comes to me and they've got new air compressors, right? We'll brand them, we'll give them names, we'll have a new identity for them, work the 3D models, we'll make renders for the website maybe, then we'll translate it to a video and explain a video, maybe a little sales video, and finally a presentation for their sales collateral and team to use. That's my ideal workflow. It rarely works like that. This is the real world. And unfortunately, if I was a better man, I'd have that down into quite a streamlined workflow with the clients I target. At the moment, the clients I target, it's a bit of a pick and mix, which does affect my day-to-day workflow, and I have to plan around that. But that's one of the things it's for all the best wills in the world. You fight fires, especially when you work for yourself. You're fighting fires all the time. You have to address things as they come up. You don't have time to have plan things out smoothly and do things correctly. You kind of do things as they come up because
Yeah.
you know you need to be paid.
Yeah, you know, exactly. If you could, like, what would you most enjoy working in graphics? If you could get the money you wanted for doing, you know, one specific graphic design related job, what would that job be? What would you be designing or working on?
See, when you wrote this question, you said what I think you said what would you
Focused
want
on.
me to given the option, and I wrote down sitting on the beach drinking martini. Best work is to not work at all, in all honesty. But I think it's very different. Okay, I wrote down a few. I'm putting them on the screen. So, so in terms of applied design, like day-to-day stuff, I think. I mean, it could be hindsight and just rose tinted glasses. I miss packaging and production. My skills in digital design are obviously very good now. I mean, you've seen my work; it's at least mediocre. Like my work's not bad. You know,
Mid at best.
but yeah, enough to be enough to be freelance, you know, sort of thing. But I miss packaging and production. Uh, at the time years ago, I thought I saw the writing on the wall and thought, this is the way the industry is going. No one cares about print and production. Let's focus on digital design. I think the problem I'm seeing these days is so many people focus on digital design that print and production. There's quite a lot of work to be had. They're quite interesting stuff because they don't have enough people in it or enough good people. I also just miss making stuff that I can sort of hold. You know, I mean, you know me personally. I make my posters for my office and stuff like that, and I enjoy that. I enjoy making things that I get to personally enjoy. You can say you enjoy watching videos, digital design, but it's all sort of on the internet. It's all ephemeral.
Yeah.
So in terms of applied design, I miss making things that I can hold and touch and I can see people experience. In terms of career, I've thought about a move to retail experience design. So obviously, when I was saying that second internship, we did a lot of fabrication, not just for exhibitions, but also for shops. And I quite like the idea of doing sort of retail design, experience design. You know, stores pay people, designers handsomely to design mock-up in 3D and help produce interesting stores and interesting experiences. You know, areas inside shopping centres, day
Is this
installations.
similar to what you've done with Glove? Like when I've seen you working on them storefronts inside, or that's more advertising their specific products? Or
Yeah, well, I mean, those are exhibition stalls, but yeah, it's a similar skill set in a way, you know, because I mean, I didn't say it earlier, I do some exhibition stuff. I'm not focused on the production side anymore. You know, that gets parted out, contracted out,
yeah,
someone else does the build and stuff. But the design and the artwork, that's me. But yeah, similar, you know. So you look at brand, you look at artwork, you start putting a 3D layout together. I mean, ideally, the move would be if I was to work for myself, well, as I still do, is probably to collab or employ someone that is a better 3D modeler. I'm okay, but I'm not the fastest or the best. So I can focus on artwork and design and art direction, and they can focus on the modeling and the rendering. That'd be good. Um, in terms of, so I mean, when you say like you want to be focused on it, you know, it depends what sort of area sort of thing. In terms of
yeah,
seniority, if I was to go back into a salary role and not working myself, I think I'd look at becoming an art director or going in at art direction. So if you don't know sort of the standard tiers, you've got junior designers, so your graduates up to maybe a year or two. Then you've got middleweights. You're probably a middleweight designer for at least the next 5 years of your career after junior, and then you've got senior. You know, once you hit about 10 years, you're a senior designer. So I'm probably around senior designer. Obviously, it's not just time; it's experience. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
like if you do 10 years at a real shit company and you do fuck all, you just do some social media posts, you're probably still a junior. It's not, I mean, it's not just time, but it gives you an overall. Art direction, I always see as a step above. So, an art director on a good team is someone who helps collate the entire vision of a design. So, a senior designer is like is almost like an operating officer, whereas an art director in that sense is a commanding officer. They oversee everyone is working towards like a single, and I enjoy that. I do a lot of art direction now. You know, I work with some freelancers and some other bits and bobs. And I suppose I enjoy getting everyone together to work on one final thing. You know, I'm not a cog in the machine. I'm overseeing all the cogs. So I suppose if I took move into a salary role, that's what I'd focus on. And finally, sorry, I wrote these down. If talking about focusing design in terms of projects, I'd like to focus on, and this is currently part of my current marketing business plan, is more mid to long term projects. So a lot of projects are usually done inside of a week. You know, pardon me, sorry. Most projects are probably between 2 and 5 days. I'd like longer a good project to me is one that takes several weeks. Ideally, I'd like to get projects that we're talking 6 weeks to 6 months. Mid to
Yeah.
sort of long term stuff, because that what allows you to do is billing becomes easier because you're not thinking about day rates and this and that and doing a lot of admin. You're just focused on one thing. And two, it gives you a lot more time to really get into a design and really work with someone and really work for a project. The problem I have sort of with my stuff now is it's sort of itty bitty, it's done, it gets billed and it's off. You get this in education, you get a long period of time to do a project, and you really put some heart and soul and thought into it. You when you get into your own, that kind of goes. And I'd really like to get back to doing more projects like that, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can see that. That does seem more enjoyable, as you said, like getting to actually put your heart and soul into it.
Yeah, you get a lot more. There's a lot more scope. You can think about. You can be a lot more creative. You've got a lot more time to refine things. It's just more viable sort of thing. When you've got projects that are a few days, you already know you're up against the clock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know the client is favouring a timely deadline or a return, or things have to go to other people first. So you don't have all the time in the world to come up with the best thing. It's about doing the best thing for that situation, which is a compromise.
This would also, I guess, this brings on to a question I haven't wrote down. Uh, how do you feel about clients, bar they're all idiots? How do you? Because I like some of the complaints you've said to me before about clients, like when it comes to how you creatively design something. I just thought that'd be interesting if you could like explain that a bit, like your thoughts on clients and working with them.
So obviously, do you mean in general? Do you mean as a freelancer?
Um, Maybe in general and specifically as a freelancer.
Okay, so general. I mean, as a freelancer now, I have no difficult clients. Sometimes you don't always agree with them. I've had falling outs with clients, and it's not like it's not like fighting or anything, but you fall out occasionally. That's part of business, the same as a
Yeah,
part of personal life. You fall out with friends, you fall out with clients. It happens.
yeah.
I've got no bad clients. I've yet to have an actual bad client, really, honestly, as a freelancer. So I've been lucky. I was talking to a guy the other day at a networking event, and he was taking the piss, and he said, "Well, that means you're ready to have one because you haven't had any so far." He was like, "You're due a bad one." Uh, in terms of general, like, over the years, like there are some clients. I mean, clients are people. That's what it comes down to. Just because they get the word client and they're paying you money doesn't stop the fact that they're individual people with very individual sort of targets, attitudes, and personalities.
Yeah.
Um, I think that personally, what I found the best thing to do is, and this sounds really funny, and I know you'll find this funny, is just be yourself. Because I mean, as a freelancer, especially when you're yourself and you put yourself out there, you tend to attract people that kind of want to work for you anyway. So you have a common ground. If you're constantly pandering to people who are different or on a different level to you, there's a kind of a difference. I don't know how to explain that. If people get with your sense of humour or your way of working, you're more likely to have a good business relationship and then respect you, and vice versa, than if you're constantly trying to work with people who don't really fit.
Okay.
That's I would say clients on the whole. I don't have huge monolithic, corporate clients, so I can't say for big teams or anything like that. But I mostly deal with people that are sort of one-on-ones, decision makers. Either founders, owners, CEOs of companies, small to medium companies. And I'd say just having an honest personal relationship with them has saved me a lot of problems. So I'd say that's like the number one key thing for me is if I can get on with them as a person. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
if I've been happy to chat on a call or on the phone with them for a bit, and we can even have a few laughs and a few jokes, and they know stuff in your life. That's a good client relationship to have, because otherwise I just see too many problems. All the general ones I've said, I've had no freelance problems. All the general ones I've had are people who expect a business to be this flat, sterile thing that just gives them a thing. They're always the ones that complain the most about the cost or about the product, or what I mean. It's almost like they don't respect the humans underneath. I think that's the fundamental thing: is respecting each other as people gives you good clients.
Okay. That's a really good way of looking at it. Um, I was gonna moving on. What are your thoughts in how the graphic design industry is moving and what it's moving towards? If you remember with that other assignment I had, this was a question on that I believe I brought to you as well. But yeah, how do you feel about the current direction the graphic design industry is going? That can also lead on to thoughts on AI. Remember we chatted about that before. But like how the graphic design industry is moving and what it's becoming.
Right. I mean, I probably wrote the most of this when you sent this question over, because there's quite a lot. Obviously, when you talk about something that's like an industry, there's so many.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I did write down to think about it now is when we say the graphic design industry, our industry is extremely fragmented. You know, like 30, 40, 50 years ago, graphic design was also, it was pretty much one complete field. Now it's almost a generalized term that people use when they don't know how to describe different sub-industries, because a UI UX designer is very different from a packaging designer. A
Yeah,
packaging designer is very different from a motion graphics designer. You know, this it's and that's the crazy thing about when people say the design or graphic design industry
it's so
is
broad.
it's so broad. Yeah, you
Yeah,
know what I mean? Like the UI UX, app design, experience design, they're all straight up doing really, really well. Lots of money, lots of clients, very shiny. Your typical graphic design, your I'd say sort of collateral printing, so your leaflets, business cards, maybe leaflets, booklets, books and stuff. That's still, you know, heavily on the decline. It's underpaid. People aren't as keen on it anymore. So I mean, those are different. But if I'm going to be very general about the sort of things you see online and things people talk about and the big topics, is I'd say the overall feeling. This is not me personally, but the overall feeling I see from most people are very pessimistic about the industry. You know, people sort of skim to skate on AI really quickly. It's things like AI. People are like, oh, AI will take jobs and this and this and this sort of thing, and oh, it's all being watered down and this and that. But again, it's very generalist because if you look at most specific sub industries, quite a lot of them are doing pretty well. So I think it's only the people that do umbrella term graphic design that are really going to suffer. And largely, and this sounds really shitty, is they're some of the least talented people. That if this is a very cruel opinion, I'm aware of this, is that if your work can easily be replaced by someone in a foreign company for cheap labour or by AI, you weren't very good to begin with. Or if you weren't very good, your work wasn't very valuable. There's different things. You know, if your work can be brilliant, you can be the best at something you do. But if the world doesn't value it, then it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Like, you know, money and prestige is equated to value you bring into the world. So even if you're great at something, if it doesn't have any value and it can't be sold and no one cares, it really doesn't matter. It only matters to you. And that's the thing about the industry is people are very pessimistic, but largely a lot of these people, if they can be replaced easily, then you know you either have to upskill into a sub industry where you matter, or you have to do something else. You know, the same with something about AI again. It's just a tool. And this happened with desktop publishing. This happened with the lecture set stuff. This, every at least 10 years in the design industry, there's a revolutionary tool. Everyone's going to lose their jobs. Oh my God. And guess what? You adapt or you die. I think that's the main part of it. I was going to say, I think it's the industry direction is a double-edged sword. So years and years ago, I was once doing a job for a labourer when I was I must have obviously still at college. And the guy's house we were working at, he used to be a graphic designer back in the day. Like, we're talking about 50 years ago, and he was talking about it and stuff. And he earned good money back in the day for what he was doing. The thing was, back in the day, no one really knew what a graphic designer did. You know what I mean? It was almost sort of not a mystical job, but it wasn't particularly popular. If you got a room of 1,000 people, you might have two or three graphic designers. It wasn't, unlike today, it's quite common. But it's a double-edged sword because back then it meant more money and less people. But it meant less sharing, there meant less, materials, less research, less creativity. And we have all that today, and you have more acceptance. But obviously, you can't have it both ways. So yeah, you can have more money, more specialization, and more protection. But on the flip side, today we have more acceptance. There's more demand for graphic design than ever. But obviously, it is more watered down. There's more people doing it. There's more tools available. There's a lower level to entry. You cannot have both. And that's the problem I feel with a lot of designers' attitude is they want both. They want everyone to love and want graphic design, but they also want to be the protective specialism. You can't have both.
Okay.
I think I've got a couple bits more on this. So, yeah, okay. So I think the biggest problem facing our industry at the moment is not AI at all. In fact, AI might be, I think, in a few years, a bit of a service to the industry in a business related way. I think the biggest thing is a lot of people, especially Western people in general, they treat graphic design like a cheap product. So instead of this, bespoke custom service, it is. I mean, largely graphic design is about solving a problem visually. Form and function to have a solution. It's basically aesthetic, so it's interesting, as well as function, visual communication to deliver a solution for a client. That's all that it comes down to. But I think a lot of people have got so into this thing of graphic design is a cheap product, $9.99 month canvas thing, that they think they equate graphic design with like a picture or a cheap design with some text.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing, is that's not graphic design. So it's that mindset of buyers. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the people who are like that buy at the cheaper end of the market. So they're not, I wouldn't be super concerned about them. However, I think the biggest problem facing the industry is people viewing graphic design as a cheap turnaround product rather than the custom service that it is. But to change that requires designers to do a lot more work on our PR, in all honesty.
Work on what side?
Our PR, our public
Oh,
relations.
public
So
relations.
designers, I say no, a lot of them are very quick to be pessimistic about these things and then claim, oh, nobody understands and it's really hard. Yeah, it is at times. It's really hard, and it's not just a pretty picture, and that's great. You're preaching to the choir. You shouldn't be. You don't need to tell other designers that. Other designers already know. Of course, they're going to agree with you and make you feel better about it. Oh no, we're all so sad. Oh, design this. Who you should be telling is the general market. You need to be reaffirming to your targets, your ICPs, general clients or generalized public. You need to be showing them and telling them what you do, how it works, the results and value it brings, and why it's worth this amount of money. The bottom of the market's fallen out because a lot of designers don't justify why we do any of this stuff. It's not good enough to go, oh, it looks good. Well, a lot of people can do that for cheap now.
But that's what you're saying, because there are those websites, aren't there, like Fiverr or whatever, where you can just pay some guy in fucking India to do some mediocre design for a few fucking quid.
Lower level public buyers see it as a product. I need a logo. What's the least amount of money I can get? It's a product. It's like I've got the Tupperware containers. What's the cheapest Tupperware container I can buy? I need some of these to keep whatever in. And they see it like that. I need a logo. What's the cheapest I can buy? So that's a natural inclination for most humans. A lot of people, you and me included, often when we're looking for something, we'll look for the cheapest we can because we're like, well, I need a thing. I'm going to get the cheapest. That will do. But what you don't understand is the value that spending a bit more money can bring. However, that's not to the general public to do. That's up to designers and the design industry to show people why spending the money is worth it. And if you can't do that, well, then you're getting replaced, aren't you? That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can't say to someone, look, this is what I do, it's very specialized, and these are the kind of solutions I provide, this is the value it brings, and this is why you're paying this money. If you can't do that for someone, then why wouldn't they go for cheaper? Because at the end of the day, you're saying you are no better than something a quarter of the price of you.
Yeah. But no, I've seen that issue a lot. Like, we had it as well with Ed, remember? Wanted those designs.
Yeah,
and he had the whole mindset of, just get the cheapest thing he could. And it wasn't until he was shown that it looked like shit that he eventually kind of realized.
I this funny. I forgot to say. Crush Connor. He messaged me the other day, a few days ago, and he said a mate of his wanted a poster doing. He was doing a dark techno night, and obviously poster design isn't really my thing. I don't really care, and I automatically sort of knew this is probably not worth my time. But I'm not going to lower my prices. And I said, look, I can probably knock it out in a half day. And he said, how much is that? And I said, about 180. So, I mean, for the record, I don't always charge per hour or per day. I prefer to price things per project. It's a better way to do business. But I tried to ballpark £60 an hour. I work 6 hours a day. So a half a day is 3 hours or £180. So I said to him, 180. I can't do less than 3 hours because otherwise it's just, it sounds really rude. It's not worth getting out of bed for. Do you know what I mean?
I'm too good to do posters. I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's not about that. It's about this. If you had 3 hours, it'd be better off me spending that 3 hours to get a client that's going to give me £2,000 to £3,000 for a project than it's spending 3 hours on a design. And here's the other thing: people that spend less amounts of money on design tend to be the most difficult clients. Something I should have said earlier is people who have a budget, are clear with you, and you're clear with them, and they're happy with a bigger price. They're normally, you send them, there's rarely any amends, it's fairly easy. People at the bottom end of the market are the ones who are difficult to, they pay late, they have amends, they want to use their own ideas. It's quite a funny thing in the design world. It's like the less someone pays, the more they expect. It's a bizarre sort of thing.
Yeah, that's fucking nuts.
But it's just that, at the end of the day, you don't devalue yourself. You go, well, this is my price for my time. And here's the thing, what you're doing in everyone's brain when you do that is you're anchoring. You're not saying, well, I could do this, I could do that, because you're cheapening yourself. And people go, oh, well, it is cheaper. If you're saying, no, I'm good, and this is what I normally do, and it's this amount for this amount, they might go, oh, I can't afford that. Fine. In their head, that's their problem. They cannot afford that. What you don't want to be doing is devaluing your work and going, oh, I could probably do it for £30, because what you're actually subconsciously saying to them is your work isn't worth very much money.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you get a bricky round to build a conservatory and you go, well, the price is a bit high, he goes, I could probably do it for a quarter. You know, that doesn't happen. He goes, well, the price is the price.
Yeah.
I'll spend a bit, give me a bell if you're interested. You know, that doesn't, and yet designers constantly try to devalue their own work, which, as I said, the general public do for them. Everyone should be doing the opposite. And that's a big problem with the direction of the industry is designers don't do enough to try and reverse the direction that the sort of the opinion that the general public have of the industry.
That's a good way of putting it there as well, like comparing it to other fields, because it's not usually considered that. Like you said, it is considered to a lot of people, a lot of the public, just a cheap product these days. But what ended up happening with the poster as well? Did you end up? I imagine you didn't do it because.
It was a friend. It come back like 10 minutes later. And he said, "Nah." He said he's going to try and do it himself. I knew that was the answer.
Yeah.
I was saying, I took that call with Ed more to help him because I didn't think he'd be a goer. I mean, when you've been doing this for as long as I have, when you've been doing it for a while, you know when I'm not going to say people are wasters. That's very rude. You know automatically if that person's going to be a fit or not. You can tell by almost the first, even if you get a text message. I usually tell by the first text or email I get if someone is a fit or not. Yeah. By the words they use, the way they approach it, I can pretty much just tell if it's a goer or not.
Oh, well, okay.
So I mean, when Connor approached me and he first texted me for his mate, I immediately thought it's very unlikely. This is a 1 in 100 it's going to happen. It's very, very unlikely sort of thing. So as an addendum, sorry, you were saying to me a second ago. It's gone. Doesn't matter. Sorry, it's gone. Doesn't matter.
Oh, no, we could try and we never remember shit when we try and fucking think. Fuck. Now I had a thought as well because the last question is what I'm not actually going to ask you.
I mean, thoughts on that. I mean, you've got thoughts on AI question. That I mean, covered it slightly.
Yeah.
I think
because that's a big thing that's come up like among like people on my course and people my age in outside of graphic design as well. Like a lot of people have this. Like you've even seen when I messaged you when we had those kids come in from the years gone in graphic design. They'd come in. A lot of them had said they work with AI. That's another thing we're talking about, like some of the stuff I said to you then. But in general, people my age, there has been this huge consensus of AI as a whole is taking everyone's jobs. It's this huge, crazy tool. You know, I've always been a bit like AI is a bit fucking dog. I've not used it much. I'm not a huge fan of it. But like, it would be really nice for you to really quite like touch on that. Well, touch me.
Well, it's interesting. Before we had this call, I was posting on LinkedIn. I just posted a little thought of mine and an article I've been reading on Creative Boom about just that, and I put some of my own thoughts in. And this is what it comes down to. This is AI is just a tool. At the moment, it's very hyped, hugely hyped, because obviously startups, entrepreneurs, and shareholders want the value of their companies to go up. And by marketing it and hyping things, the value of things go up. That's how stocks and shares mostly work. Yeah. You know, like perceived value makes stock and share goes up. So obviously, there's a huge hype because everybody wants their AI product to be worth millions. Oh, OpenAI want it, sort of thing. So when you look past the hype, you think about it logically. You forget all the marketing spiel and look what the 10 things you do with AI and blah, this will do this will do this. It's just a tool. Human beings, one of our key advantages, and has been for thousands of years, is our ability to create tools and adapt new tools to use. It is just a tool. So it's neither good nor bad. It is just a tool. How you use a tool defines how good it is for the solution you're using. It is, I think, still limited in some ways, and it's really good in other ways. I mean, I use AI in my workflow occasionally. Sometimes when I'm on big jobs, I pay copywriters because AI, obviously, a lot of people use AI for copy. You can tell. You can still, even ChatGPT 4.0, you can still tell it's written by AI. It's better, but you can still tell. I'm not a copywriter, I can't tell you how, but copy from a copywriter is better. Not all budgets have that. But when I'm brainstorming ideas or coming up with some synonyms or just working through a bit of text for a small project, AI is a good shout for that. I've used AI to generate images for certain projects. For example, I had one for a hotel, and there are very few photos of the interiors of nice hotels. I don't know if they don't like to take them or whatever the reason is, but there are hardly. It was funny, I was talking to someone about the other week about this, and he had the same problem years ago as well. There's almost no images of the interiors of really nice 5-star hotels, which I needed for the project. The client wasn't going to supply any. So stock photos, that wasn't helpful. However, AI was able to generate some, and as long as you're good at retouching and cleaning up, as long as, we're not talking fingers on hands and like huge detail, like a lobby of a nice hotel, all I had to do was some Photoshop retouching and that was a good image to go. That's not a problem. So it's a tool. I think it doesn't demand, I think it's every designer should evaluate at what point they want it in their workflow and how much they're going to use it. I think the problem comes from designers and people thinking it will completely replace what we do. And this is what I was saying before. If your work or your value is so low that it's defined just on a single visual that AI can do, then you're not very good at your job, because that's not the job of a good designer. So I don't think it's a problem. It's a tool. It's like when desktop publishing, Photoshop, and stuff came in. Some people did lose their jobs, but at the end of the day, the ones that didn't adapted, used the tool, moved on. Now we have bigger and better things. If you imagine those tools never came along, we'd still be doing the same old shit with the same old tools. So it's a natural part of, it's happening, it's coming. You either, and this is the same with all of humanity, all tools and all progress. Humans adapt or we die. We're not like other animals, and that's the thing with AI. It's neither good nor bad. If it takes your job, it's because your job was going to be taken anyway. Basically, on borrowed time, if AI wasn't taking it, someone in India was at some point. So you adapt or you die. And I've got another point here I wrote down, which is quite interesting. The biggest thing that AI will never ever do is work with clients properly. So that I would say one of the largest parts of my job is figuring out what the client actually wants and making that into a solution. So clients rarely, if ever, I don't think this has ever happened, come to me and go, I want 3 A4 size digital brochure. You know what I mean? They don't say that.
No.
They go, we think we want this thing, and you go, oh, well, this would probably be better. And they go, oh, what about this? And you go, yeah, well, what I'll do is this. You know what I mean? You're the problem solver. I mean, at a higher level, junior designer is an art working role heavily, so maybe not there. But fully fledged middleweight designers and up, you're expected to provide solutions to problems because clients are paying you to solve a problem. You know what I mean? It's like if you had a brickie or someone build a conservatory, you don't come around, you don't draw a plan and go, the conservatory's going to look like this, and this is how you're going to put the bricks in, and they go, yeah, fine, and they're just there to put the bricks in. Same as design. You're not there just to do the design. You're there to tell them how the thing is going to be. That is probably the single largest thing of my entire job, is coming up with things that they're going to be. It's not the technical, it's not putting it together. It's actually coming up with what the hell is the solution to their problem.
Okay.
And that's what AI can't do, because clients don't know what they want because they don't do your job.
I think that's the quote you said to me before that I really liked, was graphic design is providing a solution to the client's problem as a whole.
Right. So, I mean, I've got my LinkedIn still up. Oh, hold on. So I quoted, Paul Rand, famous designer Paul Rand, right? So I quoted Paul Rand, and he had a great quote about thoughts and design. And he once said, visual communication of any kind, whether persuasive or informative, from billboards to birth announcements, should be seen as the embodiment of form and function, the integration of the beautiful and the useful. The problem AI has is it doesn't know how to take people's problems and combine form and function. It cannot do that. And without some severe, like Star Trek level, technology, because it can't interface with every single person, work out their problems, and then combine the best solution and the best aesthetic and put them all together. Currently, it's something only a human brain can do. So as long as you can do that reliably, consistently, and well, you'll have a job for the next 40 to 50 years. And that's the thing. People focus on the AI taking jobs. Graphic design. But what they're taking is low-level social media posts, poor Fiverr-related. You know what I mean? They're taking the very bottom level. Number one, it's not creative visual communication approaches. It's not the stuff that you want to be doing. And number two, it's the lower end paid of the market. So who really cares? It's not a big loss. If anything, AI is replacing designers from foreign countries, India, etc., and Fiverr. So, I mean, the people who should be worried are them, because if you're a client and your budgets are pay £20 on Fiverr or £0 on AI for a social media post, or etc., you're going to choose the free option.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, clients pay me to figure out a solution. They don't pay me to make a nice picture. They pay me to figure out a solution to a major problem. Is how do we market these screws? How do we brand this new vacuum compressor? Yeah, that's what they're paying for. Yeah. We have these new digital screens for in-store. Like, we don't know how to. Great, that's my job.
Yeah, your job isn't just going in Photoshop and fucking around.
Yeah, there you go, slap done. You know what I mean? So as long as you AI that way, it's just a tool. I think every designer should utilize it in their own individual workflows. I wouldn't be worried about it. You just progress with it. As I said, like all humanity, every industry, every profession, it's adapt or die. So all there is to that one.
That's really, really good. I was going to say, what would be some advice or something to expect for young people on my course who are going to be looking to. You've already gone into like how your life experience went from college to internships to work. What would you say to expect, maybe if you know about the modern day, like
You know
younger
what's
positions?
that's really funny? So I looked for it again this morning, my Notion. So since somewhere probably when I was working at Action Graphics, that was the place where I was there for 5 years, the
Yeah,
signage, the vanguard and stuff. I started this back on Dropbox paper years ago. Started a list of advice I would give to graduates or junior designers. I started this huge
oh,
list. Every time I thought of it, I'd write it down. Later on, I put it in this document. I had it on my Notion up until last year sometime, and I deleted it. I don't know why. I don't remember deleting it. For some reason, deleted it. And it contained probably about 60 something individual sentences of like genuine advice and tips. I don't know if I did it in anger or I did by accident, but I looked again this morning, it's gone. But in terms of advice, God, there is, unfortunately, there's so much. And probably, as I said, because graphic design is so broad, a lot of it doesn't apply to everything. Is my advice earlier about moving often. If you're going to do a salaried role, and I advise doing a salaried role for at least 5 years. I mean, that's a good tip in itself. Is I'd advise no young designer to do freelance until they've had at least probably 5 years,
yeah,
either in house or in a studio, one or the other, because the biggest problem about freelancing is nothing to do with design. Basically, to be a freelancer, you already need to be good at the design part. You need to be at least above mediocre. You need to be good. You don't have to be great. You have to be good, right? Because all the problems are business problems, and if you're not good at design as well, you're
you've
basically
got
dead
you've
in the
got two
water.
fucking problems. Yeah,
Yeah. So I'd say at least 5 years. You need to be at least a middleweight designer, I think, to be freelance. But if we're salaried, I think my advice earlier about moving regularly every year or two, because you just pick up so much from different people, networking, which is hugely helpful. Get a bit of that LinkedIn action. You learn different workflows, different programs, just the way, because it's not just one linear thing. Every company and everyone does it a certain different way. So it's good you experience several because you know what's going to work for you or what could work for you in the future. What else is uh, I think you have to decide early. I didn't decide, and it got decided for me. So as I said earlier, I'm a generalist. I do quite a lot of stuff. I do everything. I've done everything from print and production all the way to digital stuff. I do pretty much nine on everything, and have because I always like the idea of trying new things. I think it's good to decide early if you're going to be a specialist or a generalist, because if you want to be a generalist and do a lot of things, you're going to have to spend a lot of time dipping into a lot of things. If you want to be a specialist, you're going to have to spend a lot of time focusing on a handful of things. You cannot do both. You cannot be great at some things or good at everything. It's that master of trade, it's that jack of trades, master of none sort of thing. You can either be great at handle things, or you can be okay at a lot of things. There's no in between. I think you have to. People say they're hybrid. I think that's a lie. So I think that's an early choice you have to make early on. Do I want to be good at? I enjoy these things, or these things pay good money, or I like this part of the industry. I'm going to focus on them, or do I want to be, flexible across a lot more industries? I think that's an important choice for a lot of people to make. And no one ever tells you that sort of thing. Um, what else? Other advice and tips. The thing is, there's literally hundreds, but
it's kind of unlimited, really. It's like you said, you already had 60 or whatever on that document. That you always delete fucking useful documents.
yeah, I have a habit of doing that. Yeah. Yeah. It's probably because I feel every so often I do a clean out and go, oh, I don't probably need that anymore, and I just get rid of the most useful stuff. I don't know why I do that sort of thing. Other things is, it applies heavily to freelance, but I think also designers. And the last place I worked, Creative Insight, the one I learned 3D Motion at, they were big on this. Is how organised you are. Now I see this with a lot of graduates and junior designers. They're very unorganized. And sometimes you see memes or jokes on the internet like, oh, how to know if you're a graphic designer, and they've got a Photoshop file and it's called like final, and then the next one's like final one, and then it's like final one v2. Like, if you're doing your files like that, get another job, because the key to being good in this industry is being fairly organized, because that's fucking nonsense. I'm not saying you have to organize every layer in Photoshop named and color coded. You have to go that far. But you should be an organised person enough to have a folder or sort of a workflow. I have it for my business, and it's been drilled in for me years. I cross-reference a Trello, Kanban board with my invoicing software to my folder structure. I know at every point where a job is, how much it's worth, and what's in that folder.
Yeah.
Because it's not as bad as salaried, but at some point around middleweight to a senior, no one else is going to carry your weight, so you need to be organised. And I think that's a skill under. I think it's a thing that people think, oh, I'm creative, so I don't have to be organized. You do, because you do this professionally. The people who are the best at this industry are very fucking organized. They are rigorous with their organization. They have a workflow and a process, and they keep to it day in, day out. That's what makes them good.
That's excellent advice.
Another good advice is I'm not as good anymore because time limitations and life limitations. But I think if you don't already, all young designers especially should keep a notebook, like an idea notebook, that they should. I'd aim to be putting one idea in there in a day. It doesn't have to be a great idea. It just has to be an idea. I'm not saying you have to do all of them, but I think you should. Most ideas, it's okay if you type them, but I mean, I like it. I've still got one. I've got like a black moleskin notebook, but and I used to put a lot more into it when I was younger. Is every day you just come up with a design or an idea. It could be for a poster, it could be for a motion graphics video. The idea is just to get used to, even if you've had a slow day or a day that's boring. The idea is you get to think of something creative every day, because it's not use it or lose it, but it's like muscles. Creativity, the more you work it, the bigger it is, the more available it is. It's like a muscle. It's not like the muscle completely disappears, but it's a lot weaker. So if every day you can put an idea in a book, a creative idea, it doesn't mean you have to do it. You just have to come up with something quite interesting that you like the idea of. I think that's a major tip, because it gets that creative muscle going every day, once a day. I think that's important because
Fuck's sake.
A lot of I had this, when you're university or when you're in education, etc. You think a lot of all projects are going to be fun. Day to day is going to be a lot of fun designing, coming up with new things. That's not the case. Most day to day design work is what they call bread and butter. It's sausage factory work, and it's pretty boring. So I think it's important as time goes on for you to continue just coming up with creative ideas all the time, because it keeps you fresh, which is helpful. Because otherwise, if you get to about 5 years and you haven't done that, you kind of burn out a bit. In all honesty,
okay.
So I think that's important, just to continue sort of coming up with creative ideas. What else? Trying to think. I think that's it for the top of my head. I think that's some of the biggest ones. I mean, as I said, there's depending on different people, there are hundreds and hundreds of tips of advice I could probably think of, and they'll come to me randomly. But it's just it's like when you're asked, your brain just sort of goes blank.
I was going to say at least one final question, which is straight.
Hold on, I've got another quick tip. Is experiment, right? So when I was in college, I was really, I mean, still am, I guess. I really like clean vector work, vector illustrations, vector posters. I liked real clean vector stuff. I'm not just, maybe sort of Bauhaus stuff or what's the Dutch guy's name? Anyway, a lot of that new grotesque stuff out of the 1970s. I liked a lot of the Swiss design. I liked clean text, geometric sans serifs. I liked a lot of that. The thing is, it's not really reflective of the world. I think as a young designer, you should be experimenting with like styles, programs, tools, literally just playing. Because the older you get and the more established you get in a career, the less you get to experiment and play. Because obviously you kind of get stuck in a routine and a workflow of producing stuff. You don't get time to experiment. Nobody comes down on graduates or junior designers for experimenting. It's kind of accepted. Once you get middleweight and above, people expect a certain sort of value of work done in a certain way. So I think it's important to experiment early. Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, After Effects, do a little motion project. You see a little template online, you play around with that. You see something, you go, I'm going to replicate that or do my own version. I think it's important to experiment early, because you lose those opportunities as you get older. You just don't get the time to do that anymore. And it limits your skills in future, because you could learn a little skill, you might pick something up that you like or you're going to use in your work later on. Later on, you won't have that. You'll just be stuck doing the things that you always do.
Okay. All right. I was going to say, final thing. Was straight from the fucking brief, and I just saw it, so I thought it'd be good to get your input on it. It's just identification of key players and trends in the graphic design industry. We kind of went on it earlier with how do you see the industry, but I don't know if that's a bit of a different question or is it pretty much the same shit.
Key players and trends. This is an interesting one, right? So I mentioned Paul Rand earlier and stuff, and I mean, if I sat here for a few minutes, I could probably think of other notable designers. I could go, blah blah, David Carson and stuff. You know what I mean? And here's the thing. I mean, you learn about these people in education, and I did. And I bought their books and I read through their stuff, and I include their stuff in my design reports, etc., etc. But largely, those people mean fuck all. They're part of design. Well, they establish things that we have today and we still use and people reference, but it's the same as art. Art going forward it reflects what's been behind it, but it's not, So the problem with them is they're resigned to design history. I know some of them are still alive, but those people aren't key players in trends. The majority of people who are key players in design are not designers, unfortunately. So as I said early, people are clued into this these days. The value of design is in what solution or what ROI, return on investment, it brings. You know what I mean? So, I mean, the big thing about design is if something's more attractive, if your soap packaging is more attractive than this brand's, you're more likely to sell more. If it targets better your ICP of your target market of 18 to 25-year-old single women, you know, there might be a 15% better margin for that product because of your design or artwork or your approach, right? The people doing these trends aren't designers. They're people like Chris Do, for instance. That's Chris Dio, right?
Yeah.
So people like that. And then most of them are, he used to be a designer, but are marketing adjacent. And these are the people who are influencing that industry, because at the end of the day, for years and years and years, design scooted past by, and the fact that people didn't really do it. As I said, it was rarer, so a lot less people do it and understood it. Less people could do it, they didn't have access to the tools, Photoshop, AI, Canva, etc. So it was a specialist skill and subject. So people got by on the fact that things just looked good because, well, largely they said it looked good. They were like, this looks good. We know it looks good. Here's your logo for your multi-million-pound company. These days, all the value in design is in what solutions we provide and how good of an investment that is. And those key trends and key players are all top-level design-adjacent marketing people. People like Chris Do, there's probably others of us out here, but Chris Do one springs to mind straight away. And unfortunately, they're people who shape our industry because the kind of design that they talk about or promote is the kind of design other people want because they immediately assume it's going to be successful.
Okay.
So the people shaping our industry are not really designers.
Oh, very interesting that. Ooh, I'll get loads of marks writing about that.
You know, if you look at, there's probably a list of 100 designers, best designers this year. There's probably I'm not saying there's not designers who do influence the industry. They might come up with new, they might work on certain briefs that are really well known. Obviously, there's still awards and stuff. I'm not saying designers don't influence the industry. There's probably several hundred to a few thousand who do contribute to the overall influence industry, but the key players and trends in our industry are definitely defined by design adjacent marketing people, because at the end of the day, people want what sells. So that's kind of determines the industry, unfortunately. Not how good something looked or how cool the packaging was, or that it was an original idea, or it was based on this or based on that. Was it worth the investment? And that, so that
is a very cool answer. That's loads of marks for that.
That's business. That's the way the world works.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I like most people as a student, I got into design. Well, forget the blacksmithing thing. I enjoyed design because it allowed me to be creative.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, a part of the job, but it's not enough, as I said. I mean, at the end of the day, you're taking someone's money and you're trying to provide them with a solution. That solution at the end of the day has to be value for money. It has to solve a problem for them.
Yeah.
I said, it doesn't matter how good the design was. No designers can influence that. At the end of the day, that's sales and marketing. So those are things, unfortunately, that influence our industry.
Okay. No, like it. Have you got anything else you'd want to say or close off with?
No, I mean, again, there's probably hundreds of things I could talk about, but when put on the spot, it's like anything. What's your favourite colour? You go, I don't like blue. And those, all sort of thing. In terms of the industry, I mean, okay. I suppose another tip on another thing is the most successful designers years ago, pre-2000s, were the ones who are best at design. The most successful designers these days are the ones who are best at marketing themselves. I see a lot of very mediocre to good designers who are running studios, well paid, well known, because they are good at marketing themselves. In fact, this is the thing with sales and marketing. Being better at sales marketing will do more for you as a designer than being a good designer. It's the craziest thing I know. That's the world of business, unfortunately. If you're the world's best brickie, you won't get anywhere if you don't advertise. You could be a mediocre bricklayer, and you could be hot shit because everybody knows your name, you get recommended, you get referrals, you advertise on every platform, and that's the world of business. It's the same being salaried in the studios. When you apply for a position, portfolio and CV, a hiring manager's not necessarily looking at if you have the best design, if you have the most creative artwork. They're looking at your briefs and your portfolio to see how well you can solve a solution. You could be mediocre, but if you reliably, consistently show a line between a brief and a solution and how you solved a problem for a client, you will get hired. If you're a creative designer, you have great ideas and you're technically adept, you completely go off the page, you don't really solve problems and you're not much value for money, you're not getting hired.
Okay.
So the biggest one, and it's the biggest red pill, unfortunately, in the industry, is the best designers aren't the best at designing. They're the best at in promoting themselves, unfortunately, in both salaried roles, portfolio and CV, and freelance.
So your message to everyone on the course is give up and find a new hobby.
No, no. I
I'm
mean,
joking. I'm joking.
obviously, to do the job, you need to be at least mediocre at design. To do the job, you have to be at least mediocre, if not
Yeah.
good, especially freelance. I think the important lesson here is that the earlier you network, market, and get yourself out there, the earlier that you know what you're doing with that stuff, the more success you'll see in the future. If you're networking, if you're meeting people from the design industry or client adjacent industries, marketing, sales, promotional events and stuff, then a couple of years down the line, those doors to jobs are more open. People you can rely on. They're going to recommend you, and you might not be the best designer ever. It's just they know you. They know they've seen your work. They know that you worked on this a few years ago. You bought them a drink once, and they go, "Oh, actually, that's how the world works." Unfortunately, it's not. It sounds crass, but it's not who. It's not what you know. It's who you know.
Yeah.
And I don't mean you need to know one person, but if you're early on in the LinkedIn game, if you're consistent on Instagram, YouTube, it doesn't matter how you do it. If you're good at networking or events, or you go to a community thing, I think it's just important to get networking and get yourself out there. I mean, you still need to do the design work, but I think it's probably more important to be good at promoting yourself, be a good salesman, than it is to be a great designer.
It's funny you say that's like one of the most important things because that is literally what this like module on the course is all about. It is literally like all that kind of shit. So I guess at least they also understand our tutors.
Some of the most successful designers I personally know are not what I would say are the best designers or most creative. They are successful because they're reliable, they're consistent at promoting themselves, they're good at all those sort of things. They're good at sales and marketing. They're not necessarily the best actual designers. I think that's just an important red pill to swallow early. It depends how you find success. Like
Yeah,
some people might go, I don't mind that. I just want to earn a salary and do my most creative work, and that's fine. I know some people like that as well. That's fine. But if you want to be successful in terms of money or prestige or network or sort of worth in the market, then marketing self promotion beats design, unfortunately.
okay. Well, no. Huge red pill. I'm just gonna switch courses again now.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Go back to marketing.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh well, I think that's pretty much fucking everything. Unless as I already said, you got anything else to say, but I want to stop
No, I mean,
into it immediately.
you know me, like especially when I've had a drink, I can ramble for hours about this
Yeah.
stuff. I can ramble for hours and hours, but that's the thing. Like, it's thinking of like concise. There's so many different facets to the industry and what we do. As I said, like the design industry bleeds into sales and marketing and strategy these days. It's not just one thing. Our industry bleeds. We've got so many sub industries. So talking about it is such a huge insurmountable thing. Almost, you have to sort of focus on sort of the little aspects of it. I think that's pretty much, and same with like tips and advices. There's so much of it, but you almost have to compile a list and not delete it.
Yeah, that would be really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I said the organisation tip.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's definitely some really good tips. I can't think of anything else.
yeah. No, I think that covers
You've
just.
covered you've covered a fuckload. We've been on Rosa recording an hour and like 10 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Yeah, but yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything that's worth saying. In all honesty.
All right. Do you want to shout yourself out for the 0 people who would watch us?
Yeah, for the 0 people. Yeah, so I'm Peter Shrive. I run P3 Design, which you can find at p3design.co.uk. I mostly sort of work with. Well, I try to focus on industrial and retail technology brands. I do product branding, motion graphics, 3D, and presentations. Yeah, cool man.
Yeah, sweet one.
Sounds.
Stop recording.